Right now I'm very close to the border strip between Gaza and Egypt. And just a few minutes ago, we heard a huge explosion as two Israeli warplanes just flew overhead. What I'm seeing in front of me is a scene of utter destruction. One house after another completely destroyed, just a few columns still standing. And I'm seeing people are basically have come back to this area to get their personal effects and take them away. Many of the people who live in this border area have gone elsewhere. They've either taken refuge in UN schools or gone further north to where they think they'll be safer. The humanitarian situation here is obviously very difficult. In many areas there's no running water. According to the UN, a third of the population has no access to running water. The electricity is intermittent at best. There are very few stores open, but there are people venturing out just to, as I said, get their personal effects from their homes and generally have a look at the damage that has happened, the destruction that has happened in this town. Don?
Ben, for 3 weeks you've had to cover this conflict from the other side of the border because the Israeli authorities wouldn't let international reporters and journalists inside Gaza. How did you manage to get in?
Well, it was just basically the reason why we got in through Egypt is that the Egyptian authorities, who were for quite some time just as adamant about not letting journalists into the Gaza Strip, have begun to relent. Basically, what you need to do is make some sort of commitment that you will not hold the Egyptian government responsible in the event you go into Gaza and you are injured or worse. And so once we were able to get that document, getting out of Egypt was fairly straightforward. We were stamped out of Egypt and stamped into the Palestinian territories. But this is only because of this somewhat easing of the restrictions on the Egyptian border. Otherwise, until just a few days ago, it was virtually impossible for anybody to cross the border in a legitimate, legal manner. Don?
Ben, how would you describe the mood on the ground after being under siege and under attack for a good 3 weeks now? Are the Gazan residents, how are they holding up?
Well, obviously they're exhausted. Having slept the night here, I can tell you that it's very hard to get any sleep because of the Israeli planes overhead and the fairly frequent explosions as they're bombing targets throughout the night. But I have to tell you, I'm surprised at how resilient the people here are. They still are able to laugh under the most difficult conditions. They're obviously defiant. I was looking out the window of the apartment we're staying in, and I saw a boy on a donkey cart shaking his fist at an Israeli jet overhead. So 3 weeks of this, and the spirit of Gaza has not been crushed. Don?
And Ben, would you say that 3 weeks of air and ground attacks has weakened or strengthened the local support for Hamas?
And it's a little difficult to gauge. Obviously, Hamas has a hardcore group of supporters. I've seen it estimated about 30% of the population. There are people here who are angry that Hamas has engaged in these duels with the Israelis that have led to this current offensive. But more than anything, there's profound resentment among everyone I've spoken with since I've gotten here against the level of the Israeli offensive, the destruction that has taken place. Because many people will tell you, this house that is in front of me that was destroyed, there was nobody from Hamas living in that house. People are puzzled at the sort of the broad range of targets that sometimes defy any explanation.